City of Richmond becoming a prime target for gun violence.
Richmond.
City of Richmond was known as one of the most dangerous cities in the Bay Area, if not the country.
And this is the For Our Future podcast. Let's keep Richmond moving forward. Hey everybody, good afternoon. Welcome back to the FOF podcast. If you're rejoining us, thank you very much for your continued support. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now tonight, I am super duper excited to have this guest on the FOF party in the FOF building. I am automatically a fan. So before we introduce her, I'm going to do what we always do, is introduce our regular panel. Oh, not so regular today, actually. I am Jay, a.k.a. Johnny Longdays, a.k.a. Anonymous Iguana. Now, to my right, our usual producer. Now, tonight, our host, we have the lovely Leslie. How you doing, Leslie?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Super excited to be on the show today. My first time on the show, and
How do you feel behind the mic?
I've missed it. It's been a minute since I've been on the mic, so happy to be here.
Good. We're happy to have you, as always. And we have our regular, our pillar of the show, I would say, Miss Diana. How you doing, Diana?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm super excited to have Leslie with us and one of our guests. This is especially a treat for me because I love meeting women in combat sports. So, you know, a little teaser, but why don't you pass it on to our guest today here?
Okay, so tonight we have 2008 Olympian. She is the head instructor at her judo dojo, and we'll definitely get into that. She'll explain more what she does, how she got there. I can't wait to do this. I myself was raised in a house full of women, so I'm super excited and super stoked to have this going on, especially since the last day of March, which is Women's Month. So, with no further ado, we have Miss Sayaka Torra.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Happy to have you.
Happy to have you. Now, Sayaka, let's start with just a formal greeting, I guess. So maybe could you explain to the crew out there, to the viewers, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a 2008 Olympian. I've been doing judo since I was 5 years old, and have been doing judo at the East Bay Judo Institute, which is right in El Cerrito. So we're a local nonprofit judo club. And I'm 38 now, so I started when I was 5. That's 33 years of doing judo, pretty much since I can remember. Judo has been a part of my life. I'm actually not the head instructor of East Bay Judo Institute, but I am one of the instructors there, who we all volunteer our time to teach judo at the dojo. None of us get compensated monetarily. We're a nonprofit. I'm also a mom to a 3-year-old, so he keeps me on my toes. But yeah, I've been doing judo my whole life and am a real strong advocate for women in martial arts.
Definitely.
That's awesome. So actually, can we go back a little bit? Can you explain to everyone what a dojo is? I hear this so much across like multiple martial arts. So like, what exactly is a dojo?
Yeah, so dojo is a Japanese word for, a school where you learn martial arts. So dojo could be a karate dojo or judo dojo, but we just kind of refer to it as a dojo. It's easy to say, and I guess it's easier than saying judo club. So if you practice judo, you go to the dojo, practice judo.
That's so crazy. I mean, I took a few karate classes. I trained Muay Thai for 5 years and Jiu-Jitsu for 2, and I never knew the definition of a dojo. And just for some reason, it was just always like a place to go practice martial arts. But now I know the definition is a place to.
Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But
Fair enough. Fair enough. But there is a definition. There's a proper definition. I didn't know.
there is,
Okay, cool.
and I didn't look that up before I came. But
Okay.
it's comforting to kind of just say we're going to the dojo.
Yes.
It's easy to pronounce. Everybody can say it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a second home to a lot of people who practice martial arts. So
Okay. Makes sense.
So, what do you love most about the sport? Like, what attracted you to it? There had to be some level of consistency with that sport. So, what was it about judo that got you hooked?
Well, I was 5 when I started, and I really didn't have a choice if I could do judo or not, because my dad was the head instructor of East Bay Judo Institute for many years. He recently stepped down within the last few years and kind of passed the baton on to
That's nice.
another instructor. So my dad was the head instructor of our dojo when I was 5, and he kind of one day just was like, "You're starting judo today." I mean, I had grown up around the judo club and had been around it, and I was like, "Okay," not really knowing. But the understanding with my dad, and I was raised by my dad, so the understanding was that I was going to do judo until I received my black belt. And for me, doing judo wasn't really a recreational activity. It was more like part of my education.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a negotiable activity. Like, I had to do judo until I got my black belt. And so 10 years later, I got my black belt. And at that time, I could decide, if I wanted to stay in judo, if I wanted to compete, to just practice recreationally. And by that time, I had some minor success, like on the junior level. So there's junior level and senior levels of competition. So I had been a little successful on the junior level, and I was like, okay, well, let's just see where this takes me.
Okay.
And took me all the way to the Olympics,
Oh,
insanely.
that's awesome.
Not
It was
too
a
shabby.
long road to get there, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the summary of how I ended up where I ended up.
Yeah, and just to put things in perspective, though, I mean, she's saying that it took her 10 years to do it. I trained off and on jiu-jitsu for 2 years. I never got past it. I never got any kind of anywhere, and that's a full 2 years. So I'm sure that it obviously takes a lot of work to get to that point. The black belt is the highest you can get as far as degrees. Am I correct?
So actually, interestingly, in Japanese, the word for first degree black belt is shodan, which means beginning degree. So actually,
Wow.
what's regarded as when you receive your black belt, your first degree, there's different degrees of black belt. But when you attain your first degree is when you really begin learning in that sport.
Wow,
Interesting.
that's
So
intense.
Yeah.
yeah, so everybody thinks like, oh, black belt, like I'm a master now, but in essence, I mean, I still feel like I'm really learning a lot about the sport and developing as a person. I'm a fifth degree black belt right now, currently, but you start off at first degree, and first degree is really where you begin your learning.
Gotcha. That's intense.
What's the highest degree?
So 10th degree is the highest. I think there's only one person that's attained that, who is the founder of judo, whose name is Jigoro Kano. He invented judo in 1882, and I believe he's the only person that has the 10th degree. He's passed away, but 10th degree is the highest, but there are several individuals who are like 8th degree and 9th degree.
Wow.
That's crazy. I love what Sarah put. Sarah Abigail. I'm gonna butcher your last name. Ihiju.
Oh, that's my friend Abby. Hey, Abby.
So Abby said she gave us a definition for dojo. Her definition, it seems like, and it says, and a second home to the parents of those who practice.
Nice.
I really like that.
That's my dear
really dope.
friend. She's a parent at the dojo.
Oh,
I love Abby.
Second home.
shout outs to Abby.
Shout outs to Abby.
She was my doula too. So
Oh, okay.
Oh, so you guys are really close.
You guys are really close. Really, right?
Yeah. So how would you say it positively influenced and impacted other aspects of your life?
I don't even know where to begin because judo has been such a main part of who I am. There really is no identity for me separating my life without judo. And I actually wrote a piece that I think some of you have read about grit and why grit matters. And that's one of the main things that judo has taught me, is that you really learn the true meaning of perseverance. I mean, in the sport, you're getting thrown down to the ground and you have to constantly get back up. So just the symbolism of getting thrown down to the ground and having to get back up constantly is kind of, you can apply that to life. You get knocked down 8 times, you get up 9. And the sport itself is very challenging physically, but also mentally, emotionally, especially as you go through high levels of competition. So you really have to learn things like self-respect and courtesy, respect for others, modesty, humility. It's such a humbling sport. So all those things that I've learned through judo, I've learned to apply them in my life outside of judo, on and off the mat.
Most definitely. I noticed that actually with a lot of fighters, the further they advance in their career, the more humble they are about it. I don't know, it's just a certain aura about them. The more advanced they are, just the more they're toned down, because they're secure with themselves. They understand, I know the sport, or they've been humbled before, because when you're sparring or whatever the case may be, there's times where you do good in the sparring, and there's other times where you don't do good. So I guess that plays an aspect of it.
Yeah, I get that a lot too. Especially, we were talking about Joe Rogan before. A lot of his guests are UFC fighters, and it always seems super chill and super mellow, and the exact opposite of what you think somebody would be, knowing everything that they know, being a 5th degree black belt, or just knowing how to literally just end you. But they're
I don't
always,
know about that.
but they're always such nice people,
Yeah.
Like Francis Ngannou right now, you fought on Saturday, and it's completely.
I watched that fight.
He's a monster of a man, but when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, he just seemed like just the nicest person in the world.
Yeah.
He had been through a lot. What Dee had just said, he definitely he comes from humbling beginnings, and you can tell that's probably helped him out with maybe his training and stuff. Just being humble and sort of taking it stride by stride. So I get that.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the hallmark of a true martial artist to me, is not somebody that necessarily needs to strut their stuff and puff out their chest and show, that they can beat everybody up or something. I think when people find out that I do judo, even in school, we were talking about, growing up here in the Bay, and, people found out I did judo, and they're like, oh, fight me, will you throw me to the ground and show me? And it's like, that's not what judo's about. That's not what martial arts is about. It's about self-control. It's learning how to exercise those types of things in the dojo, so you don't have to use them in the street. You're not trying to pick fights with people. It's ultimately about bettering yourself as a person. So that's what we try to teach at EBJI as well.
I think that out of your piece, the one that you just mentioned, and out of that piece specifically, I think that's definitely the idea that I got. There was a part where you said, or where you wrote, that through judo you learned about having courage and the ability to manage fear and failure. And that one specifically really stuck out to me, just because, I think naturally as people, we are scared, and we are scared of failing specifically. And I don't know, I think that and having the ability to manage that and learn how to manage that is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm human and I struggle with that every day. I have, anxieties, and since becoming a mom, I have new anxieties that I didn't have before. So I'm by no means perfect in any way, but judo really gave me the opportunity to face my fear, like in competition, for example, going out there, you train as a group in judo on the mat, you train as a group. But when you go out to competition, you are out there on your own, kind of similar to if you're in an octagon for UFC or MMA, or if you're a boxer in a ring. When you get out there, it's you against another person. So it really is testing yourself and just seeing what you're made of that day. And it's frightening. I remember being at the Olympic trials, and it was the most nerve-wracking thing. So when people say like they're not nervous, I was like an emotional wreck, and it was terrifying. And thinking about it now actually makes me nervous, because I was telling myself when I was in that situation, I don't ever want to be here. So it's pretty amazing that people like Michael Phelps, these people who can, Conor McGregor even, can somehow go to a place where they like that fear.
Right.
And I think some, combat sports athletes to an extent enjoy that, enjoy putting themselves out there and testing themselves.
You mentioned that you weren't perfect, but there's a view out there that I'm sure begs to differ. Nate, you got your wife here. I'm sure you beg to differ when it comes to her not being perfect. I just wanted to put that out there and hopefully earn you a few points.
Happy wife, happy life.
So for the audience that's new to judo, can you talk a little bit about the style that encompasses judo? So is it more like floor work? Is it striking? Like, how does it differ from other combat sports?
Sure. So judo, like I mentioned, evolved from jujitsu, Japanese jujitsu. It was invented in 1882 in Japan by Jigoro Kano. And I'm not honestly too familiar with other martial arts. I'm very familiar with judo. Judo involves no striking techniques, like we don't break bricks or bash boards. There's really no striking in terms of competitive judo. It's grappling, where you grab onto your opponent's gi, which is the judo uniform, and you're trying to throw them to the ground. You get points for throwing. And then you can also do mat work, which is kind of what people see in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where you have to make progress, where you can arm lock. You can only arm lock the elbow joint. You can't do like shoulder locks or ankle locks or anything. And you can also choke, and you can also pin. So those are some ways that you can learn to win in a match in judo.
Gotcha.
So you would say it's more like a defensive sport? Because I heard one of my friends does jiu-jitsu, and she was saying that in jiu-jitsu you use like the other person's force, right? So judo is like kind of similar in that way?
It's very similar. Okay. So it's using physics essentially to leverage someone else's strength against themselves. So for example, if someone's like pushing into you, the idea is like if you push back, it's meeting their force. Whereas if instead you pull them while they push, there's a moment where they're off balance, and you can then use that to throw them. So the theory is that if you're smaller or weaker, you can use that to exactly.
Interesting.
So if you're smaller, like a smaller woman like me, hopefully I'll never be in a situation where I have to use judo outside, but hopefully I'll be able to leverage some of what I already know instinctually in my body if I need to.
So interesting. Wow.
I'm sure it'll be like a quick reflex. Yeah, I'm sure.
I hope so. I don't know. I'm getting older, so my reflexes are getting slower.
So I actually have this question for Anselmo because he was interested in knowing. So competing in a sport like jiu-jitsu, as a woman, I'm sure you face lots of challenges. So what's one of the biggest challenges you faced, or have you ever, had a hard time because of it?
Yeah, I've had many challenges. I think when you try to set a goal that's very high, like trying to make the Olympic team, there's ups and downs, and the higher the goal, the more roller coasters of emotions and wins and losses. I actually would say one of the biggest challenges for me was not making the 2004 Olympic team. So I graduated in high school in 2001, and I spent the next 3 years basically trying to make the 2004 team. I took 3 semesters off of college from UC Berkeley and basically gave up my life to try to make that 2004 team. My dad dished out tens of thousands of dollars to help me travel around the world, training partners. You know, when you're training and traveling, there's so many people that come together for you for nothing in return. And so I felt obligated to them, but I didn't end up making that team. That was a real setback for me, disappointing. And since the Olympics are only every 4 years, I basically had to pick myself up and say, all right, I guess we're in it for another 4 years, which is a long time to commit to something when it's so physically, emotionally draining and demanding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Could I also, since it's something that I recently seen on Sports Center or maybe on Instagram, I'm not completely sure. What did you receive any different kind of treatment when it came to you being in the women's category? I would say, let me use this as an example. They had posted or had a news article on the NCAA March Madness, and they compared the different gym equipment from men's to women's equipment, and it was ridiculous. I'm talking about women's had maybe a set of a max of the 25-pound free weights, and the men have a full gym essentially, and you know they have the cryogeno lab where they go and they cool down or whatever. I'm not sure how that works, but they had all the bells and the whistles, and the women had nothing. Did you ever go through anything like that in the Olympics? Was there any kind of gender preference or anything like that?
You know, I read some of the questions that you were going to send me, and I was thinking about that. And quite honestly, I did not experience a lot of discrimination based on gender or stature, or not that I could tell. From my experience on the mat, women and men, boys and girls, we were all treated pretty much the same. And my dad did a really great job of coaching us and holding us all to the same bar. The bar was not lowered in any way for any of us when we traveled. I mean, the women's team stuck together, and then the men's team kind of stuck together. But there was not any kind of insinuation that we were less because we were women, or that we did judo and we were women. I never felt like I was lower than anybody else. I will say though, however, I did experience some interesting things happening when I was training outside of the dojo. Like if I was lifting weights at 24-hour fitness, people would come up to me and start correcting my form, take it upon themselves to kind of be like, oh, this is how you should be doing things. I don't know if that happens to other guys, but I think being a small Asian woman, they kind of see you, and I looked really young. Mm-hmm. I was young. So things like that happen, but nothing major. I think being a female in the sport of judo, you gain a lot of self-confidence, and I think people respect you for the work that you put on the mat and the results that you put out. And so I don't feel like I was disrespected in any way on the mat.
I was going to ask if you thought that maybe that was potentially because part of the culture of judo, from what I read from your piece, it's also about, I think somewhere in there you put becoming a better person and becoming a better person for society as a whole. And I thought that was kind of like interesting in itself because, like you said, in the gym, there's much opportunity for mansplaining or underestimating you just for your appearance or, implicit biases that people might have. But I wondered if that was maybe potentially because of the culture of judo and what you guys kind of practice.
I would hope so. We've had some people come in and out of our dojo that have been visitors that kind of push that boundary a little bit. Like, I think if people visit, they see a woman on the mat as an instructor, and they may make a judgment call like, oh, I don't know what they might think. But in terms of our judo club, East Bay Judo, I am one of the few female instructors at our judo club, and the other instructors are male. But I have never felt disrespected by the other instructors, and I know that they have my back and respect me, not because of my gender, but because of who I am and my accomplishments. They've seen me put in the work. So I think that speaks for itself.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're speaking for you now. We have Sarah, Gina, obviously Nate, Zuki. So they definitely have your back.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, most definitely. I definitely relate to that because in undergrad, I went to UC Davis undergrad. I competed in boxing. I was a 118 division, and I really didn't even like mentioning it to people for like the longest time. Like some people here may not even know because it's really like people. It's kind of belittling sometimes. Sometimes people will be like, "Oh, that's really cool," but then other times people will be like, "Really? You? No way! There's no way you could." And same thing, like, "Oh, what? You box? Oh, show me some moves. Show me this." And it's like it's kind of. I mean, I get it. Sometimes they're surprised by it, but it's kind of like annoying. So I definitely get that. Yeah, I guess it comes with like people that, you know, if you're a woman and you're in a combat sport, people like, I don't know, it just interests them because not too many women are a part of combat sports. So I definitely get you.
Yeah, I think my experience might have been a little bit different if I were starting judo as an adult. And going into something that I wasn't really familiar with, being a little bit older. But since I had done judo for so long, it's just part of, if there's one thing that I'm really comfortable in, it's like being in a gi, being on the mat, instructing, teaching, working out with kids and things like that. But I think there are challenges, definitely, and I've heard them. And I think it's unfortunate that some women feel scared or they feel like they're discriminated against because they're female. You know, they have a hard time getting partners. No one will work with them. So I think it's really about finding an environment in a judo club, a dojo, that'll foster an inclusive environment and not care, you know, if you're big, small, man, woman, you know, old, young, welcome you and make you feel accepted. You need to find a dojo like that.
That part.
Yeah, most definitely.
That part.
So it sounds like you had a pretty good support system while you were, you know, going through your whole judo journey and even up until now. So who would you say were your key mentors, like in the sport?
Definitely my dad. He's been my biggest supporter. Hey, Dad. I don't know if you're listening. But he was, you know, he raised me. He got me in the sport. He was my coach and really, you know, paid for everything as well. So he has guided me on and off the mat for my whole life. And he has set the bar really high and has high expectations, but I'm glad that he does because you know, there's no reason to aim low when you're shooting for your goals. And when I said to him, you know, I want to try to make the Olympic team, never once did he say, you can't do that, I don't believe in you.
That's awesome.
He's like, well, you better get ready to work because it's not going to be an easy road. So my dad really helped me out a lot.
That is so cool. I mean, I love that coming from somebody who didn't have a dad. You know, I never had a dad example or anything like that. So it's so cool. And was he a single parent? If you mind me asking.
I have a stepmother as well who supported us at home as well. So no, not completely a single dad, but my main parent that raised me.
Your main parent, yeah, that's so cool that he played that mentorship. I think as a grown man now, that's kind of our dream is to sort of guide your daughter or son to reach their dreams. And speaking of which, I'm sure, you know, after not getting into the 2004 Olympics, getting into the 2008 Olympics, you achieved at least one of your dreams. Could you sort of let us know what the feeling is like, what it's like to be in one of the most prestigious events in the history of mankind?
Oh, and also, can you give the audience just like a sample of like what it took to get there, kind of like what you did day to day? So like walk us through that.
Sure. So when you are an elite athlete in any sport, and you are at a really high level of competition, your life pretty much revolves around that sport, and you have to sacrifice a lot in order to achieve your goals. So obviously working out a lot. I did 2 workouts a day usually, like in the morning and then in the evening. I usually did some type of judo every single day, like 6 days a week. Sundays were either just resting or sometimes tournaments. So there was a lot of traveling also involved. So we're traveling to Europe, traveling to Asia, traveling around the country for different tournaments, making weight. That was a big one, a big stressor for me, because my weight class was 48 kilos, which is 106 pounds, which is insane to me that I ever weighed that. So I had to cut weight. I had to train. I was also working about 30 hours a week at a part-time job.
Wow.
Because I needed to help pay for my rent and my living expenses. So day in, day out, it was just like you were a machine. Go up, you wake up, you do your workout, you go to work, do another workout, go to sleep, wake up, and you repeat. So it's a long road in terms of 4 years of that kind of grind. But honestly, that's what it takes, because everybody else who is trying to make it to that level, if you're not doing the work, someone else is. And more often than not, if you're not putting in the work, you're not going to make it. And even if you are putting in the work, there's no guarantee that you will either. So you better just, put your marbles all in one basket of working hard, so you have no regrets, and go for it.
Yeah. Oh, that just seems like so intense. And you went to Berkeley too. I didn't know that part. So getting into an intense school, working 30 hours a week, training alone is more than a part-time job.
2 days.
That in itself,
crazy.
yeah, that's insane. So I bet it gave you a lot of structure. Like you had to go through the day. It was perfectly planned, and you had to like stick to that plan. You couldn't like deviate really much.
Yeah, I mean, after I was done competing, I didn't really know how much stress I had been under until I stopped competing. And my last tournament was actually the Olympics in 2008. That was my last tournament ever.
Wow.
I hung up my hat after that. But yes, essentially you live and breathe that sport for years. But fortunately, I was able to make it to the Olympics, which was an incredible experience, surreal. And when I won the Olympic trials, honestly, I felt a lot of relief that I made it, and that I had achieved the goal that I had sacrificed so much, and so many other people had sacrificed so much to help me get there as well.
Totally. What would you say to someone that wants to start judo? So like, let's say a teenager or like a 7 or 8 year old that they're interested in it. What would you say? What are the tools you need to be successful?
I would say if you are interested, go for it. There's no shame in trying something new, and just to see if you like it. And my biggest advice for anything would be consistency. So just show up for practice, show up every practice, and just work hard, and you will see progress. And I think that's something that you can apply to anything. People want to see results quickly. They want to excel fast. But progress is slow, and it's not linear. There's ups and downs, but over time, you're going to see yourself improve if you just put in the time and effort. So my recommendation would be go for it.
That's a good recipe for life, I think, right? Definitely not linear.
Yes,
life
absolutely.
itself, or anything that requires any kind of grit. So you're at the Olympics. right? You're walking in. How's the aura there? I remember it. I'm a huge soccer fan, so I remember the FIFA 2008 FIFA coming out, and it was a different feel from all the other Olympics when it came to like the songs and everything was obviously more Asian infused. And you being born in Japan and sort of knowing more about that culture, how was the whole aura there? Or just give us a little bit of us normal people, give us a taste of what it was like.
Yeah, so as a kid, I always watched the Olympics on TV, I think as a lot of kids do. The Olympics are this year in Tokyo, so I highly recommend people to just watch it. Now you have social media and you can watch it basically anywhere, but I grew up watching the Olympics, watching the opening ceremonies and being like, wow, that's so cool. You know, watching Carrie Strug land that vault in 96 and when I walked into the stadium for the opening ceremony, it's actually an interesting experience as an athlete to walk into the opening ceremony because 90% of it is waiting in like a separate location to walk in. So you're not actually seeing, and honestly, I've never seen the Beijing opening ceremony. I've never seen the whole thing because we were in a gym. All the athletes are just in a separate gym waiting to get into line to walk in. For hours, you're waiting there.
It's like a long lunch line.
Yeah, and they didn't have TV screens or anything, so we're just kind of sitting there waiting.
Oh man.
But the walk in was pretty incredible because you're walking through like a large tunnel, long tunnel, and it's dark, and you kind of can just like see the light at the end of the tunnel and hear the crowd. And I actually started like tearing up because it was such an emotional moment for me. Walking in, and I walked in with Ronda Rousey. If you know
she's
her.
awesome.
I've never heard of her.
She's awesome, yeah, of course.
She was my roommate at the Beijing Olympics.
No way.
Oh, that's cool.
So I was like, Ronda, I'm crying, and she's like, yeah, enjoy it, or something. I don't remember what she said, but we walked in, and literally, like, when you walk onto the track, it's like everybody's just cheering. You can feel the energy. And every single person I looked at was smiling, like just, yeah, so proud and happy. That's a really special moment for me, walking into the opening ceremony.
Did you get to share some of that special moment with your dad? Did your dad go?
My dad was there, but he didn't go to the opening ceremony in Beijing. He has coached at previous Olympics as well, so he's had the opportunity to walk into his own opening ceremony.
Wow.
But he did watch me compete in Beijing, which was also a pretty crazy experience because I drew the defending Olympic champ first round. So there's a draw for judo, and you get matched up with who you're going to compete against. Yeah. And I got matched up with probably the most decorated female judo player ever. She's from Japan, Ryoko Tani.
Wow.
And so I fought her first round and I lost. But I was really glad I had the opportunity to compete against her because I never had. And I actually idolized her growing up, which is weird, competing against somebody that you idolized. But it was a good experience for me just because it proved to me that I felt like I deserved to be there. And I thought I put up a good fight. I lost, but I gave it everything I had, which I think that's all you can do.
Yeah,
Definitely.
That must have been a mind trip, you know, going against someone that you idolize so much. You watch them, you're probably really familiar with their style, and you're like, wow, now I have to fight you.
Yeah, she had autographed like a poster for me when I was a kid, and I actually had it hanging like in my room growing up.
wow.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
then this was her 5th Olympics. She has 5 Olympic medals, 2 of them gold. She
No
won her
big
first
deal.
one when she was 16. And she was a mom, and now I'm like, I don't understand how she competed after giving birth. But yeah, I had the opportunity to compete against her in her last Olympics, my first and her last. So
That's crazy.
That is amazing.
So going back to the whole mom thing, how has that presented new challenges? How has that changed you? And I bet it was just like a huge difference from, judo to motherhood. So kind of talk to us a little bit about that.
It was definitely a huge change. I mean, I stopped competing in 2008, and I gave birth to my son 10 years later in 2018. So I did have 10 years where I dabbled in other things like kettlebell lifting and just doing all the fitness stuff. I got married, but motherhood is challenging in a whole nother way, just because you have the responsibility to love and care for another human, which there's a huge magnitude of you feeling that responsibility. And as a mom, you grow your child for 9 months, you give birth. There were so many things that I gained so much respect for so many women that I did not have before I was a mom. And now it's like, hats off to all moms out there, because the job is hard and we're all in it together. And I have a new appreciation for being a mom and all moms out there that I did not have before when I was an athlete. I was like, oh, yeah. I don't know. I guess I was thinking, how hard could it be? Turns out it's very hard. I told my husband, I was like, after, giving birth, I'm like, that was the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do in terms of even all my training, which is insane that I was like, all women go through this in some shape or fashion. Yeah, I would say it's way harder than any judo training I've ever had to do.
Is there any future aspirations for the young 3-year-old to pursue what seems to be judo legacy of the family?
Well, my husband is also a judoka, so a judo player, and so he's also a 4th degree black belt. So judo is in the family. My dad, I have 3 brothers. All 3 of my brothers do judo as well.
Oh.
So judo runs in our family.
So don't mess with the toy.
We'll do judo for sure.
Nice.
But I think it's his decision. It has to be the person's decision of how far they want to take themselves in the sport. And if he wants to just compete recreationally, I'm totally fine with that. I think he should compete. It's a good experience.
Yeah.
But I'm trying not to be a mom that's going to force their kid to, you need to win every medal, or you need to win all these championships, or push your kid when they're really young. I think it's important for kids to have fun, especially when they're younger. And if they want to take the sport really far, that should be their choice, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to have to put the work in to get to where they want to go. So they really have to have that inner drive. But if he wants to get there, I guess we'll support him. He has to understand it's going to be a hard road.
Yeah.
But he's only 3, so he has no idea.
Did you get less sleep competing in judo, or when you had your son?
That's a good one.
I don't know. It's a toss-up, because I've spent a lot of jet-lagged times traveling around the world and competing in tournaments with no sleep. But motherhood is a whole nother beast too. So I don't know. It's a toss-up there.
Okay, here's another toss-up. Do you get beat up more now with your son, or did you get beat up more back then?
Definitely more back then.
Okay.
Yeah, I choose my opponents wisely now. They're mostly like 10-year-olds.
Very wise.
Well, we've been doing more outdoor judo because we haven't, because of COVID, we haven't been able to be in the dojo, which is crazy to me that it's been a year since we've been on the mat. But we're hoping to reopen in May in some capacity. So within the last year, we've been doing outdoor workouts, and I joined in one of the workouts today, which was hard, but I try to, keep up some level of fitness if I can.
Today was a beautiful day for it too. Today was really nice out.
Yeah, it was really hot.
Kind of hot, I would say, probably to work out, but better than other days, and especially last week.
So you mentioned you had 3 brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you the youngest? Are you the oldest? Are you somewhere in the middle?
I'm the oldest.
Okay.
And I have 2 twin brothers who are 21, and then my youngest brother is 19. So I
All
grow.
good ages.
I'm sorry.
All good ages. I miss.
Yeah,
miss those
they're
ages.
in like the prime of their life, you know,
Yeah.
just figuring things out. But I've grown up in a family of all guys. So you said you came from a family of
I'm
all
the
women.
Opposite, yeah.
I'm completely opposite. My husband, my son, my dad, my 3 brothers. So honestly, I'm used to being around a lot of men all the time, which is, it's okay with me. I mean, it is the way that it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is nice to have some female energy once in a while. I did start like a women's judo class at my judo club because I think it's important for women to be in martial arts. But yes, my brothers are crazy, but they're awesome. They're awesome people.
Yeah. I actually have 3 older brothers. I'm kind of the reverse. So, yeah, I was raised mostly by men, but I'm the baby of the family. 3 older brothers. My mom was usually at work. You know, she had a business at the time, so my dad really raised me. So yeah, it definitely gives you a different perspective. Like you really understand how, you know, secretly sensitive some guys can be, but in a good way, or how gross they are, or just like how they really think, you know, like you have a really good idea.
How gross they are.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, nothing really surprises me anymore of like what, you know, levels of cleanliness or, you know, stuff that comes out of their mouth or things that they do. It's like nothing really surprises me anymore, and I don't know, I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, on my side, it showed me to how could I say this, to be more clean, and I think it just becomes, it's just, I naturally now put down the toilet seat and everything like that. It's just had to live with it. It just comes to me now. I don't do it on purpose or anything, but
Yeah, I think I've had to deal with understanding that it's just gonna be left up. You know, you have to give and take.
Yeah.
So you know, so it's just accepting different things. But.
So you also mentioned that you're from the Bay Area, right? So born, raised from here.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you say that helped you in your judo career, or even just outside of life? You know, meeting different people, different backgrounds. How has that helped you really?
Well, growing up in the Bay, I think, is a really unique experience because there's so many different types of people. There's so much diversity here that I think you really take it for granted. When you start to travel outside of the United States or even just California or even just the Bay, you start to realize that things look a lot different than they do here in the Bay. And I always enjoyed coming back home from wherever I was coming from. I was like, thank God, I'm coming home. But just being even raised in the United States and then going to other countries gives you real appreciation for what we have here in the U.S. I always was amazed that people in other countries traveled a lot to South America, Dominican Republic. I've been to Tunisia. I've been to Kazakhstan. That was a crazy experience.
Oh man, I bet. Yeah.
But traveled all around the world, and it always amazed me how people had so little, but they were so happy. But it really made me appreciate what we have here just in the United States that I think a lot of people take for granted. Clean water, you know, the fact that you don't have to take water with you. I mean, we had to sometimes travel with water to drink and brush our teeth with. Hot water. Yeah, I mean, floors that are clean. You know, I've spent nights in hotels with cockroaches and sweltering heat. I mean, today we were at the park and some kids were like, oh my gosh, it's so hot here. It's like 80 degrees and they're just dying. And I'm thinking, I've been in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and competing in like 100-degree weather, no air conditioning.
Humid as can get.
Humid. You don't even need to warm up because you're already sweating, putting on your gi, which weighs 5 pounds in and of itself. So, just things like, you know, air conditioning in your car. It's a luxury.
Totally.
So,
Can I touch upon the cockroach thing that you said? All right.
Sure.
So just to put things into perspective. Let's just say this is the United States cockroach. This is everywhere else. Like they're so much bigger for some reason outside the country. I'm from El Salvador, so like I've dealt with just supernatural Hulk-sized cockroaches, and they're not the same. And they hiss at you, and they're just different kind of beasts.
You see some crazy things.
Yeah.
My friend and I went to American Samoa one time for a judo tournament. There were straight up boars, like wild pigs.
Those are dangerous.
Walking down the street, it was crazy. Just experiencing those types of environments and cultures. And Kazakhstan was another place where people. I got there and they're like, "You don't look American," which was kind of like really discriminatory thing to say. I'm not sure what that means, but they looked at my passport and they're like, "You don't look American." Because I was Asian, but I spoke English.
And you said, "I forgot my flag. I'm sorry."
And they're Asian, but they speak Russian. So it was a very interesting. You go to these places and they're like, "You're Asian, but you speak English," and then they're like blonde-haired Asians that speak Russian.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's so trippy, but just having those experiences of traveling all around the world really made me appreciate living in the United States and just understanding different cultures and how people live. It's really amazing.
What's the most pleasant place that you've been, while competing?
I really liked France. I'd like to go back there. A lot of these places I went, I didn't have the opportunity to sightsee. It was kind of like a go in, compete, get out. You don't really have, it's not a vacation. So I'd really like to go back to France. Egypt was also really cool. I went there for the 2005 World Championships, had the opportunity to go like inside the pyramids, which is really, it's pretty amazing when you're standing there looking at the pyramids, and you can actually go inside, like crawl inside and look around. So that was another cool place that I was able to go to.
Since you're saying that you would go and compete, just go and compete really fast, it would happen. Like how many would you just be there days at a time, weeks at a time, or less than that?
Definitely not weeks. The only tournament that we went to where we spent longer time there was actually Beijing. We got there for the Olympics about a week out, and then I was the first day of competition there. So I had like a couple weeks after to just hang out. So I was there for about a month. But most of the time you get on a plane on like Wednesday, you get there Thursday, you weigh in like Friday or Saturday, and then you're out the next day. So it's really rigorous schedule. You don't have time to adjust to the, acclimate or anything like that. You just come in, make weight, compete, get out, come home. Yeah.
And then speaking of the rigorousness and all your 2 days and all that stuff, everything that you had to sacrifice. I'm sure you had to sacrifice a lot. Is there any advice that you would give the younger Sayaka that the present Sayaka knows now?
I would give myself a lot of advice. One, stop stressing out. I think actually I should give that advice to myself now too. Stop stressing out. Enjoy the process. I think it's easy to get caught up in the results and putting so much pressure on yourself, but really enjoying the process of working out and doing judo and competing and traveling. Also, I wish I knew more about better diet and things like that. I think I eat a lot better now than I used to, just because I know more about nutrition and things like that. But those are pretty much it.
Okay. So that's not much. Then you pretty much did it the way you wanted to, or the right way at that time. Then it seems like.
I'd say I have not that many regrets when I look back
Very cool.
on my competitive career and what happened. I think that maybe I regret a little bit not training hard enough for the 2004 Olympics. I could have been a little bit more disciplined, and maybe I would have made that team. But for 2008, I think I did as much as I could. So
it sounds like you had to build up a lot of grit for that alone, because if you compete, if you try to get there for 3 years, like you were mentioning, you don't make it, a lot of people would get super discouraged and not want to try it out again. But the fact that you were like, no, it's gonna happen. I'm gonna make it happen, and you made it. The following Olympic trials. That says a lot about your determination and things like that.
Yeah, the window of opportunity to make an Olympic team is very small. So in 2004, I was 22, turning 22 that year. So I knew that I had another 4 years, which would make me 26 that year, 25 at the Olympics itself. But so I knew I could push my body for another 4 years. If I had been 25 and didn't make it, to push it to 29 is the longevity in the sport, especially at the lighter weight classes, is a little more challenging just because you rely a lot on your speed, and it's hard to maintain like a lighter weight as you get older. So you don't see very many 30-year-olds, definitely no 40-year-olds in the sport of judo competing at that level. So I had to make a choice of whether I would stop or try it just one more time. And I decided, why not? One more time. I can do one more time.
Yeah, I mean, I think any athlete, even at the recreational level, can somewhat understand that. I mean, from 1 year to another can be a huge difference. I mean, I can't go, it seems like 2-3 months without something going wrong, so I'm sure that there's a lot of athletes out there that can vouch for that. I mean, 3 years of putting your body in that intense state, it's got to be crazy.
You must have not even had like much of a social life during undergrad, because you couldn't really enjoy it. You couldn't really do the things like go out with friends and stuff because you were just so focused, and you couldn't drink the night before because you had practice most likely the next day and like things like that, right?
D goes right into the drinking part.
Yeah, I mean, I had some fun in college, but definitely, when I stopped competing in judo is when I kind of got to lead what I would call a normal life of a normal person, as in having friends and going out to dinner and being able to go out. And it took a long time to kind of acclimate to that new lifestyle because I was so used to being on such a regimen of training and making weight and eating certain foods. And it was when you've lived your life like that for so long, with that mindset, it's a very hard transition. You can't just snap out of it in a day or a month. I think it was a period of several months where I really grappled with, not feeling guilty about eating ice cream or going out and having fun and not caring about if I'm going to, wake up late or not get enough sleep. I even still struggle with that now in terms of sleep. Like, I like to get enough sleep to feel good. But it's a very hard transition. People think, even if you go to the Olympics and you win a gold medal, there are a lot of athletes that deal with depression and serious mental health issues after coming out of competition, just because you spent so many years of your life trying to attain a certain goal. And whether you attain it or not, that period of loss is real. And there takes a period of transition to go into like normal life after that.
Yeah, that normalcy. He went from grappling on the mat to trying to grapple a whole new lifestyle at that point.
Exactly. It was really challenging. I mean, you kind of are like, what do I do? I have all this time, and what do I do with my life? I mean, I get a job, and I gotta, there are these realities that you have to face.
You got yourself a husband.
Yes, I did.
Something you gotta do. That's off the list.
Yeah, but it is a hard transition.
It's really cool though that you still incorporate it into your life. I feel like that's such a luxury too. Like it's so cool that you get to pass it on to your kid, and your dad is very involved with it. Your family's involved with it. You can go to competition. So I mean, that's really cool that you get to do that for sure.
Yeah, I really, I haven't had the opportunity to devote that much time since I've devoted limited time since my son was born. But before my son was born, I was traveling and being really, really involved with the dojo in terms of taking kids to tournaments, because so many people gave so much of themselves to me for really nothing in return to get me to where I got to. So I have really no problem paying it forward in terms of if I could instill some of the lessons that I've learned or impart some of the knowledge that I've received through judo. If I can give that to even one kid and maybe change their life or, affect them for the better, then I have no problem doing that. And it's not about the money for me, I think, or anybody else at our dojo.
That's awesome. We're getting to our finishing point here, folks. One of the things that I think I drew from this episode was you get knocked down, you get up again, but you're never gonna keep me down. Or was that Chumbawamba? I think that was Chumbawamba. No, in all seriousness, we are wrapping up here on the FOF podcast. Is usually where we give out our shout outs, Sayaka. So we usually go down the row. Leslie, did you have any shout outs that you want to give out for tonight?
Yeah, so shout outs to family and friends. Suki, that was actually on the YouTube chat roll. So shout outs to Suki for tuning in. And thanks to Moving Forward for having me on the show today. I've been working with you guys for a couple weeks now, and it's exciting to be on the mic with you guys.
How do you like it? How do you like the solo? Let's just go ahead and go there. Since you're not on the mic.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You guys been great.
Cool. Well, I mean, we're more than happy to have you here, dude. You help us tons. You've helped us tons already. So don't be, she'll be on the mic again, I'm sure. Tonight was a perfect night for her to be on the mic for the first time. And Dee, did you have any shout outs that you want to give out tonight?
And shout out to everybody in this room. Shout out to any women in combat sports. It's not easy, especially Sayaka, for sharing some knowledge. We got a lot of gems out of this episode. And that's pretty much everyone I want to shout out.
Cool. I want to shout out Nate Torra. I want to shout out the whole family, EBJI, East Bay Judo Institution. I want to shout them out. They came out in full effect tonight, so thank you so much for participating and commenting on the live chat. It shows your unity, and that's exactly what Sayaka was talking about. So, you can physically see it. And I want to shout out a special person, Anselmo Ramirez, which is behind the mic tonight. Behind the boards tonight, not behind the mic. Usually you see him behind the mic, but tonight he chose to help out on the boards, so we greatly appreciate you, sir. And lastly, I do want to say that this Saturday, actually every first Saturday of the month, we have a hiking event. We start at 8 a.m. I'm sorry, we're going to do 10 a.m. This time out at Alvarado Park. You can find that information on our IG or Facebook at Moving Forward 510, or on my IG channel. My IG is called the J channel, so you can find more information on that there. So please join, and you can receive this cool, let's try to get it close up, hat pin. All right, it looks better on a hat. So that's what we're trying to do. Just a little token of our appreciation for you guys participating in our events. Now, the lady of the night, the star of the night, Sayaka, did you have any shout outs that you want to give out?
Well, shout out to Moving Forward. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really fun to talk about my experience. And of course, shout out to the EBJI family. I see Abby and Gina, and of course, my husband Nate. My family, I think my dad might have been tuning in. I'm not sure if he figured it out. But thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to doing it again.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining. Nate, thumbs up right back at you. Now, Selma, could you please hit those credits, mute the mics, and we're out.
Mind you.